Hi, in today's video we're going to be installing the Arribada Horizon Arctic R2 software, specifically the tools you need to talk to your tag. So we're assuming you have a developer's kit in front of you, you've just unboxed it and you want to set things up and configure the tag. So on my screen you will see an Oracle Virtualbox setup, and what I've done is just run through our website install guide to set up a default Ubuntu VirtualBox. So I haven't done anything yet with it, it's just installed, I've rebooted it and I've turned on my video to record this intro. And what we'll do together is we will set up the tools, so we'll go through and run all of the commands we need. And once we've done that, we'll do some basic configuration with the tag. We'll look at how you update the pre-pass, and we will go through and essentially answer all the questions that users have regarding using the tools. So to get started, I'm assuming that you may be new to Linux or even VirtualBox. Again, there's no reason you have to do it on VirtualBox. You can do this on a Raspberry Pi as well, but for a number of our users, they find it useful to still be within Windows on their desktop machine in the office, and to use VirtualBox, meaning you don't need any more hardware to work with the tags. So to get started, I'm going to go to Terminal. So I'm just going to type Terminal, and it will show up here. I'm going to open Terminal up, and the first thing I recommend you do actually is just check you have internet, because we're going to be pulling in software from different repositories. And to check you've got the internet or you're connected, just do ping google.com. And if you get a response back, you know that you are connected. Press Ctrl+C and it will jump out and go back to terminal. So I can see I'm connected to the internet, which means I can make a start. And what's useful too is if you have the website open on a second screen or another computer with all the instructions, it's nice and easy then to have your primary screen to set up the environment and the secondary screen with the guide on our website. Okay, so if I type ls, it means list. I can see where I am in our directory. So right now I'm in home. Perfectly fine to install the software here. So first thing you're going to do is sudo, which means the super administrator tool, apt-get update. It's going to ask you for your password. You would have set this up yourself when you installed it. I'm just going to run through this to essentially update the operating system with the latest repository list. Okay, now that's done, we're going to install all of the prerequisites. So these are all of the tools that we need. So super administrator, again, we want the right privilege to do this. This time we're going to do apt-get install, and I'm essentially on my second screen here typing out the commands, and these are all the programs we need to install the tool. So Python 3, Python 3.7, Python 3 pip, our libraries. Let's check I've got that right. G, yep. Then we want to put YAML on, which is this one, dev version. Our USB utilities lets us talk to the device over USB. And then lastly, this command. So once you've typed that out, just check for any typos. You'll always find there's a typo when you do this, but scan through the commands and check. It looks okay to me. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And that's going to go through systematically through our list and start to install the software we need in prep to install our tools. Okay, so that has now finished. It took about 2 or 3 minutes to do. And I'm now back at the command line, and I can continue from here. So the next thing you want to do is you want to check that the right Python date util is installed, because it likes version 2.8.0. Sometimes it can put the wrong version on. So you'll see the next command on the instructions on the web page asks you to run a command. You can use pip3 to install, which is pip for Python 3. And I'm just going to write this out here. Date util equals 2.8.0. So it should come back and say this is okay. Yeah, so it says no files were found uninstalled, successfully installed. So we now know that 2.8.0 is already satisfied, so that's good. We're now ready to install the actual software. So we're going to use Git for this. We will use git clone to clone the repository to this VirtualBox. And now I'm going to type in the GitHub repository URL. Arribada Horizon .git. So we're just going to clone this into our directory. Okay, so we've now cloned the tools, which means if I do ls, which is list, we should now have our Horizon folder that you can see there. So let's go into that folder, ls again, and you can see we have a selection of software, and we've even got some enclosure files that are useful for 3D printing and the hardware schematics as well. But what we're interested in is installing the tools. So we're going to go into the tools directory, list again, and you'll see there are two flavors. There's version 2.1 and 2.2. 2.2 is the latest, and that's the one we want to target. 2.1 is in there because there are still some users using that toolset that may want that because it's specifically tied to some firmware releases. So they get errors if they use version 2.2. So we've left them both in there. But in our instance, we're going to go into 2.2 folder. List that out again. And now we're looking at the install file. You can see the setup.py there. So we can go ahead and actually install version 2.2. So to do that, it's sudo python3 setup.py install. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to run through now and install the software. Okay, and you'll know it's a success because you'll get that message at the end saying finish processing dependencies for Arribada Tools 2.0.2. So this is good news. We've managed to install the tools, and we're in a position now where we can start to talk to the tag. But just before we do that, let's actually check that everything is definitely installed. So from this point on, we can call the tools. They're called tracker config. So you can call tracker config, and we can say what version are you. So I'm going to go sudo tracker config -- version. It's going to come back saying version 2.0.2. Great. I can also ask it for a list of all the commands that we can give it. So I can do -- help, and it will return all of the available commands. And we know now that we're ready to connect our tag. Okay, so what I've got here, I've got a second camera looking down at my desk, and I have a tag in front of me. So what I'm going to do is show you how to connect a tag. In this instance, I've got a battery connected to mine, so I've got a LiPo battery here, and I've got the tag there. Let's just check it's in view. Yeah, that looks good. Shift it around so when we connect the USB, you can see it. Yeah. Okay, so in VirtualBox now, I have a USB cable that I'm going to plug in to the host computer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you now. Let's figure out a nice way to do this. Here we go. Okay, and I'm now going to connect that to the tag itself. So when I connect this now, you're going to see the light on the tag light up. There we go. You can see the battery, the orange is on because it's actually now charging that LiPo, and the green says voltage is good, and this lighter green means we have a connection to the computer. If you don't see this lighter green, that means there could be an issue with the driver on your Windows host machine. Either it doesn't exist or you haven't installed it yet. And if you see it flash up for a brief moment and then extinguish and go off, that also shows that Windows tried to initiate it or enumerate it over USB, failed, and it basically can't recognize the device. So at this point you won't be able to continue until you fix that problem on your host. And to fix that, have a look at our website, go to the Windows driver page and make sure you've definitely got the Windows driver that will enable your host, i.e. your Windows PC in this case, to detect the USB, and then it will pass that through to VirtualBox. So we're in VirtualBox now. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually select devices, go up to the top and work with the VirtualBox to tell it that the USB device is actually connected. So now we've connected our Horizon device, we want to go to Devices in the top menu here, go down to USB, and you'll see it's listed here as Arribada GPS Tracker. With your eyes on the device, click it, and you'll see the green light will go off and then come back on. And it's now actually connected the device. You can tell that because it's got a little tick. You go back to the menu now. That means we can actually talk to the device moving forwards. If you don't do that, you'll get a back-end error. And I'll actually show you that now just to illustrate what that means. So if I disconnect the device from this computer, believing it's connected, and I type in sudo tracker config and I do --status, this command just talks to the tag, comes back saying I'm on, my firmware version is X, everything's okay. If I run that without the device connected, you'll get this error. So you'll see Arribada Tools backend will say not found. That means that it can't detect the tag. And it's a classic error where even though you've got it connected, VirtualBox may not have enumerated it because we haven't selected it from that list at the top. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to reconnect the tag. So I'm going to plug in USB again. I'm looking at it here, the green light's on. So now what I need to do is I need to go and from the menu at the top, I need to enumerate it again. So I need to select it from that drop down. So let's go up here, Devices, USB, there's my tracker, I'm going to click. I'm looking at it to see it's come back okay. Yep, the green light is on. So now I can go forwards and start to talk to the tag. And if you ever get any issues where the green light doesn't come back on, just disconnect USB and plug it back in again. There are times when sometimes it gets confused as to the status, but it will just needs a disconnect for it to come back. And we can check this by going to USB and we can see that it's happy that this one is actually connected. Okay, so we now want to talk to the tag and send it that status command. To do that, I'm just going to switch my cable over here. Okay, to do that, we are going to type sudo. In fact, I'm just going to press up on my keyboard, so it'll do the last command. So let's run that status command again. Now we're actually connected. And this time, instead of throwing a back-end error, it's going to come back and it's going to tell us the status of this device. And the actual command itself, what it's doing is it's checking for any connected devices. So it's checking if the satellite module is connected. In this instance, it isn't right now. It's checking if the cellular module is connected, because there is a cellular little breakout board for this too, which was used on the National Geographic expedition when we first made these boards. You can see here it's returned saying it's found the GPS module, no cellular, no SIM card, and no satellite, which is fine. We know that because we're just using the board on its own. So great. We're connected, we can actually start to work with the device. And if you want to check things again, I recommend running that help command, and you'll get that list, so you can see what we're going to work with here. So, first thing I recommend you do is download the configuration file from the device. And from factory, it's ready to go. There's a default configuration set on there. You can see it on the website if you want to know how often the GPS is set to schedule. But if you just connect a battery to it out of the box, it will just start logging based on the default config. But we can pull down the configuration file and we can have a look at it. And to do that, the command is sudo tracker config --read _config, and then you can type in your own name for the config file. So I can just do example1 and then do .json. So we use JSON as our format. That's how we that's the data format that we use to work the configs. So I'm saying here tracker config, read the config, and call the config name example1.json. Hit enter. It's copied the config to my computer. Press ls to list, and I can see example1 is down there available. If I want to have a look at that, I can use the nano command, which is like a file editor. I can type example1.json, and it will pull up the configuration file on this specific device.